Behaving badly. We have Michael Logan, the TV Guide reporter whose beats range from soaps to Star Trek, and Robert Burnett is here. He's a freelance sci-fi critic and film editor, and also, you know him as Mark Altman, the editor of Sci-Fi Universe magazine. I know him as the Socrates of sci-fi. All right, guys, let's get right to it. Let's get started. Which was the best new show of 1996? Michael, what do you think?
Well, if you'd asked me the first week of Millennium, I would have said Millennium.
And I would have agreed with you.
I pooped out like the rest of America, and I don't want to start off on a negative note here, but I don't like any of these new shows. I think Third Rock from the Sun, actually.
Okay, well, there you go.
It's a stretch in the concept of sci-fi, perhaps, but yes.
Mark Altman, what do you say?
That's why Michael only writes for TV Guide, not Sci-Fi Universe. I mean, I'll tell you. Baywatch Nights. No.
Terrific. I love
it's terrific. No, I'll tell you. I don't really have a favorite this season. I think it's been a pretty bad year in general for new science fiction. Intriguing concepts, dark skies, Millennium, but they haven't paid off for me. They haven't sustained the initial hype. Robert Burnett, what do you say?
You got an X-Files ripoff and some dark fantasy show. Where is the new sci-fi? The best sci-fi show?
Right.
4th season of Babylon 5. It's new, it's good,
That's
it's my
cheating.
favorite.
That's a very good point.
It's not cheating.
The original Star Trek is still in reruns. Best show in 1990.
No, it's, hey, come on, new episode.
I vote for Twilight Zone.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I like that Caligula Emperor Cartagia.
Stick to the program, Burnett. I said best new sci-fi
There is
show.
no best new sci-fi show. No, there is not one.
Michael, you brought up a very good point about Millennium. I mean, like everybody else in the country, I watched the opening, the episode. I mean, my God, it was hyped during baseball season. Every 8 seconds, you'd see a commercial.
Steve, Millennium,
Well, sure, how about
those sci-fi concepts?
But
Big
what about
sci-fi
it?
show,
Why did they lose so much of their
Well, the
audience?
problem with that show and so many of these others is the gimmick, for lack of a better word, of the show is extremely limited. And when you tune in episode 2 of Millennium, you realize you're basically seeing episode 1, same thing with episode 3, 4, on and on.
And so on.
And Lance Henriksen also, I think, really fooled you.
That's why when they repeated Millennium, it went down the crapper in terms of ratings.
Went down the crapper, ladies and gentlemen.
Not the expression I would have used.
Well, let's talk about like a show like Burning Zone. Okay, that's another one that I thought was going to be terrific, for lack of a better word.
You know what? I like the pilot. I thought it was really cool.
You know what do we need to do to save Burning Zone?
Write a lot of letters.
But that's what I mean. You take that concept. How can you possibly sustain a series based on finding bizarre viruses
Every
over
week.
the course of one season, let alone what
And
everybody
it wasn't
should
enough
hope
for Burning Zone. Now they did it on
5 years.
Voyager. They had these CGI virus. Star Trek. Well, I got him.
So you did.
How to get it in there? But they did this virus thing, and I think that's a very disturbing real-life problem we'll be facing.
I'll tell you what's really disturbing. In fact, we have to go to a break right
More
now.
episodes of
When the Socrates of sci-fi is talking, we have to go to a break. Don't go away, folks. Later on, we're going to pick the #1 SF show of 1996. But coming up next, we'll talk about the best in fantasy television. It's all happening when SF Vortex returns. All right, welcome back to SF Vortex's Sci-Fi Television Year in Review Holiday Spectacular. And we are still in our infamous war room with Mark Altman, Michael Logan, and Robert Burnett to hash out the best of sci-fi television this year. Now, it seems that if you want to succeed in the syndication market these days, it seems you need dragons, hand-to-hand combat, or a red skin-tight bathing suit, guys. But Highlander the series, Hercules, Xena, and newcomer Sinbad the Sailor pretty much monopolized the world of syndication. Here's a peek at what 1996 brought us in the way of sci-fi fantasy television. Oh, that's hard for me to watch. It stirs up those memories when I ask for a raise here in the Vortex. Robert Burnett, what about it? Best fantasy television program of 1996 was?
Red Shoe Diaries. Absolutely. But no, seriously, Highlander the series, I think, those immortals hacking away at each other with those swords, I buy it. It looks like they're really fighting. I dig that show.
You know, in Hercules and Xena, there's more silicon than there was in that Star Trek episode with the rock creature. I mean, but that's not why you watch the show. You watch the show because it has this kind of redolent of the films we liked as children, the Ray Harryhausen. In the CGI has allowed them to tell these kind of fantasy stories. It's not Excalibur, it's not Conan, but it's fun, it's diverting, it's fluffy, but it's entertaining.
But it's very comforting entertainment. It's like the equivalent of TV comfort food to watch these shows, especially if you're a Ray Harryhausen fan. And these are not state-of-the-art effects that we're seeing every week here, or state-of-the-art acting. Right. And those accents.
And there aren't any accents. Where are the accents?
The accents are from Malibu Beach.
Kevin Sorbo. It's like, dude,
Baywatch accent.
completely wrong.
Hold on. Before we can go on to the next subject, you guys are ducking the question. Best fantasy show of '96 was the question, Mr. Logan.
Of action.
Of fantasy.
Highlander, I would say.
I would say Highlander because at least Highlander attempts to be more. But, you know, I don't think you can judge Hercules and Xena on the same level because they're just trying to be fun shows. To me, they're almost the same show. And then Sinbad, you know, is, let's not even talk about it.
But Sinbad has the just bodacious baby in that show.
Okay, well, anyway, you know, our viewers in our War Room poll, they agreed with you, gentlemen. Highlander was picked as the #1.
Better than all the movies.
As the #1 show. And in fact, we have a letter from Carl Riley. He emailed us to say, I originally picked Hercules, but Xena's character is a little better defined. For me, 1996 was a good year for sci-fi and fantasy.
You know, they're doing a Hercules and Xena cartoon. And it's going to be, actually have singing. Xena's going to sing in it. That's not a joke. They're really doing it.
Well, that's going to come very funny.
Okay.
I didn't think so either.
Don't cry for me,
serious.
Athens, or
Let
something.
me ask you a question. What about the plethora of all these new fantasy shows? Does this hurt? Nice word, plethora. Wasn't
like
it? Very
that.
impressive. Does it hurt the stories, the writing each week? I mean, there's so many now. I mean,
And there's going to be more. They're coming out with Conan next season. So I think, you know, Hercules and Xena do it better than anybody else. They're the Star Trek of fantasy shows. We don't really need the imitation.
I think there's a freedom with the fantasy format that a lot of the, you know, the sci-fi shows like Star Trek, for example, the two
It's
current series,
unpretentious.
are
It's
having
unpretentious.
problems with, you know, with where they can go or where they've already been and duplicating. And this is kind of like an open field. It's really, I'm seeing a lot more fresh stories and just fun hours of TV from the fantasy
folklore.
shows.
all right,
Yeah.
we got to go. We got to break away for a second because we still need to engage in a ceremonial combat to determine which SF show was the best in '96. It'll happen right here in the War Room when SF Vortex continues. I want to behead somebody. when we come back. All right, welcome back to SF Vortex. We are still in the War Room with Robert Burnett, Michael Logan, and the Socrates of Sci-Fi. He is Mark Altman. Now, according to my mom, SF Vortex is the greatest show around, guys. But unfortunately, Mom wasn't on the voting board when we came up with our 5 final choices for the best sci-fi show of '96. Let's all take a look.
Open your thoughts to me.
We don't have time for this.
Open.
Lieutenant, actually, I didn't want to push my luck.
Looks good on you, sir.
Thank you, Ensign.
Wait a minute, aren't you two wearing the wrong color?
Don't you know anything about this period in time?
I'm a doctor, not an historian.
In the old days, operations officers wore red, command officers wore gold.
And women were less.
I think I'm going to like history.
If the world were to see this, it would destroy all we've gained in a few hours. Tonight, we have a new enemy.
Another message coming in from the aliens.
They'd be responding to my message this quick. What was that?
The sun feels great. Thermal and ultraviolet radiation are at hazardous levels. Oh, lighten up, Tuvok. This was a great time and place, and you're getting to see it firsthand. Come on, take off your shirt. And risk dermal dysplasia. No, thank you. Vulcans. Deep down, you're all a bunch of hypochondriacs.
There you have it, guys. The 5 nominees. Best show of '96. Michael Logan, who gets your vote?
X-Files, even on the weeks where it stinks, and that does happen, sometimes with alarming regularity, it's still better than anything else.
Okay, there you go. X-Files for Michael Logan. How about for the Socrates of Sci-Fi, Mr. Altman?
Space 1999. No, actually, first of all, I'm going to tell you one thing. Instead of Voyager, Space Above and Beyond should have been one of the 5. Voyager does not deserve to be in the best of anything, let alone the best science fiction of the year. But I would have to say Deep Space Nine, particularly on the strength of episodes like Troubles and Tribulations, The Quickening, Apocalypse Rising. Good year, great year for the show, although Babylon 5 is a close second for me.
Okay, Robert Burnett.
I feel the same way about Voyager, and as much as I cherish Deep Space Nine, I've got to go with Babylon 5. It's a hard sci-fi show. It's got great sci-fi concepts, and they're really playing their mythology out well. Okay. I mean, even though I'm not a Straczynski fan after what he did the new Twilight Zone, I got to go with Babylon 5.
Okay, that's enough positive stuff for one.
Let's knock this off They still hate me at Deep Space Nine. It doesn't matter.
How about name me a show? Robert Burnett, start us off. One show that you expected to be a hit, that you were expecting to be great, and it wound up a big, giant disappointment.
The new season of Bold and the Beautiful.
What was you thinking with the whole... Well, that's a whole other thing.
I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you.
No, Dark Skies.
Really?
I think Dark Skies tanked. Kennedy killed by aliens?
Baywatch Nights really disappointed me.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
I really had high expectations
Baywatch
for David
Nights.
Hasselhoff chasing ghosts and goblins and God knows what.
Mark Altman, the only guy who watches Baywatch for the acting. Didn't work for you?
It's the Space Precinct of 1996. No,
Hey,
actually,
Space Precinct's a great show.
I'll tell
Jerry
you,
Anderson.
Millennium was a big disappointment for me. You know, I just don't think it's lived up to the potential. I think that that is probably a big disappointment for me, more so than any other show. Dark Skies, I agree, has not lived up to its potential. And finally, Sliders has self-destructed this season. It's gone from really intriguing satire to high concept, kiddie kind of stuff.
All right,
really bad.
Now it's time to announce the 1996, the SF Vortex War Room show of 1996. Can I get a drum roll something in here? Okay, the biggest show of the year according to our viewers, ladies and gentlemen. God, have I built this up enough? Babylon 5. How about a little golf clap?
Yeah, there you go.
Very nice. All right. Can we? No confetti? No nothing? What's the
Congratulations, Babylon 5.
What's the budget on this show?
It's certainly not enough.
May I note that Babylon 5 also won the Sci-Fi Universe Reader's Choice Award, so it's a good year for Babylon 5.
I thought the X-Files won that award. Oh, no, maybe not.
Okay, now, let's pretend I'm Santa. I know it's a stretch, but just kind of, pretend that I'm Santa Claus without the sitting on my lap part, Robert. Don't get excited. Okay, now, you've been a good boy this year with the exception of...
No, he hasn't.
Don't talk about the Gentleman's Club
If
thing.
you could have one present, okay, to fix sci-fi, a present to make sci-fi better, what would it be for 97?
I want Terry Farrell in the classic red.
That's a whole other war room.
You know what? Get rid of Voyager. Cancel it and start a new anthology Trek show.
Well, you know what? I was going to say cancel Voyager, but since you said it, my wish for the new year is a UPN miniseries with the original cast based on The Ashes of Eden. Bring back Kirk, Spock, and McCoy one more time.
Wow. Michael Logan?
I want to see all of these networks stop trying to clone each other's shows, stop trying to put on shows that have a concept that lasts no longer than 2.5 episodes to sustain our interest, and these one-note performances. I looked at Lance Hendrickson the first week of Millennium. I thought, God, this guy's great.
That's what I
next
thought,
week
too.
I figure out this is the Daniel Benzali performance of the year.
Hey, don't knock Daniel
I got it
Benzali.
going nowhere.
Another edition of the War Room. I want to thank.
Yeah, right.
I want to thank Robert Burnett, Michael Logan, and Mr. What's your name again?
Socrates. Science fiction. I'll pay you later.
All right, we'll see you guys back in a couple of weeks when we do our big 96 movie and review show. All right, you folks at home, don't go anywhere because we'll be right back with our pick for the best episode of 96 as the Vortex continues.